Okay, ladies and gentlemen, take your seats, please. Take your seats, please. Dr. Goodwin, where's Dr. Goodwin? Okay, Dr. Goodwin isn't here. No, there he is here. Okay. Doctor, I think we are now back to your wind-up section of the science report, which is the one action item. And as soon as we can corral members. Hey, Mr. Nickel, will you look out in the hall and yell at council members, please, who are not here, and tell them to come back?
You don't have to yell.
He might. Okay. All right, you got three of us. Let's start on this. Dr. Goodwin.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And with your permission, I'll just spend a little time giving background on this agenda
this
item.
Is
okay.
File item 7C is the suggested contracting amendment and staff memo and attachments with details.
That's correct. So what we're asking for is funding to continue the San Francisco Estuary and Watershed Science online journal for the next 2 years. And as this is a fairly large investment by the science program, we'd like to give a few details and explanation for it. So this journal is truly one of the unique aspects of the science in the region and the science program. This online journal covers from the headwaters to the ocean. And so just the subject scope is somewhat unusual. It was also founded as an intent to create a forum to capture the current understanding of the system and to update, to have a record of the science dialogue. It's subject to very rigorous peer review. We were trying to put together precise statistics on this, and the success rate for a paper submitted for publication, we believe, is somewhere between 1.3 and 1.4. So that means there's a very small acceptance rate within the journal, which indicates the quality. The reason there's some uncertainty in that is that the UC Online system changed databases in 2008, and so we're having a little difficulty getting back before then. I'd also like to acknowledge the editor and managing editor. Dr. Sam Luoma is the current editor-in-chief, and Lauren Mascatine is the managing director. Usually when you have a journal and you function in an editing capacity, most of the people submitting papers, you never see them. And for those of you who've been in an editing position, authors can get quite aggressive. And the fact that these two individuals who are very, very well known, very well respected in the science community here have stepped up to take this role and take that kind of heat amongst their colleagues is you really attribute, I think, to their ethics and their commitment to the community. So the value of this journal is it's independent. It's not influenced by the funding source. And why this is so very important is that Dr. Luoma has actually been encouraging contributions in certain areas where there's controversy. And so he will try and get back-to-back papers or papers in consecutive volumes that really hit on some of the issues where there's uncertainty or, in some case, legitimate scientific debate amongst the science and engineering community. And the fact that this is a free journal and it's not influenced by the funding source is very important. So if there were donations from one special interest group, of course, it may be seen that the response to that previous paper was somehow biased or the paper got published. Even if that's not the case, the perception is there. The next point is this journal is accessible to all, to agency scientists, NGOs, universities, the whole community. It's free. And I think why that's so important is that some of our community, like the NGO community right now, has obviously been having very difficult times in the last few years. So to actually get access to your online journals is sometimes very difficult for them. It's an open access journal. I think this is the trend of the future. It's managed through the California Digital Library, which is largely regarded as the 11th library in the UC system. And it pulls together the resources across all 10 of the UC libraries. The other advantage of it being an online journal, it gives the editors the ability to publish monographs longer than the traditional paper in paper copies because of the cost per page. It also allows special issues to be put together, so if there's a certain topic that's of concern, for example, to yourselves, you would really like to see something there, there's the ability to go out, get the best minds, and put out the state of the art. And thirdly, through the California Digital Library, there's now also the ability to publish up to large data sets as part of the paper. So not only do you get the paper, if you want to go to the data, you just click on the DOI, it takes you directly to that data source. We are working with the editor. Some of the concerns we had when we met with Lauren Hastings and myself with the editors is that we really wanted to know what is the impact that the journal's having. And so I have a few statistics I'm going to run through, but we're also working with them to understand how the journal articles are being used, breaking it down by users, who's actually accessing it. So we have broad statistics, but we're going to need to go to more sophisticated search engine metrics to get there, which haven't been there in the past. So one of the things I did at the joint QEMF-IEP meeting, and there must have been probably 500 people in the audience, was that I started the talk just to ask how many people in the audience knew about the San Francisco Estuary and Watershed Science. And it was 100%. So everybody knew of the journal. And then I asked, and this is just a straw poll, how many of the audience would regularly review articles? And we didn't have time to count because it was such a big audience, but we think it was something over 50%. And then I asked specifically how many have seen the last article which we reported last time, which is about 2 weeks old, and it was about 50%, a little less than 50% had actually gone to the webpage and taken a look. So some of the statistics, the journal was founded really as a thought between DWR, the USGS, and many of the other scientists in 2003. There's now been 23 issues, and 91 papers have been published, and there's well over 90,000 either views or downloads of that data. One of the things that I realized when talking to the editors, and this was from my own personal experience, I personally think this is a great underestimation. And the reason for that is I question myself, when was the last time I went to the journal and picked out a paper? And it was several years ago. And the reason for that is that the community will send out to all of their friends, hey, there's a really cool paper here, and they send you the PDF. So this might go out extremely broadly, but it's not reflected in these statistics. So one of the things we're doing on the journal is to actually, when you view the paper or you download it, it will come up with a little message. We welcome you to share this with your colleagues, but please share the link, not the PDF. And that way it will give us better metrics. So just a few of the statistics. In the elevator discussions we've had, there were some questions that came out from Chair Eisenberg and Mr. Grindstaff, and we have a few of those. So for projects funded through the science program, there's been about 64 projects since the journal started. And of those 91 papers, there were 30 papers have been published, 3 are still in review, and 8 were declined. So I think that's a measure of, one, the scientists we have working. It survives this independent peer review. But also, to me, importantly, it's not just the papers which we're funding are getting published. It's only 1/3. So this is indicative that other folks who are funding research around the San Francisco Bay Delta system are also using this journal. Another question was the science fellows, and this immediately got checked on our box as part of the training for the new fellows class when they come in. We've had 63 science fellows. 9 of those have published. Several were actually declined, which shows, again, the level of the journal. Just because you're a science fellow doesn't mean you get preferential treatment. And 2 are in review. So that's only about 1 in 6 of the science fellows who actually published in the journal. So that's one of the things we'll be encouraging the next class to come into. Going over to the budget, you have in the package in front of you a detailed breakdown which we requested from UC Davis. As you can see, that the sum of money requested is it's about $250,000 per year, a little less than that. In addition to that, we asked them to articulate the additional costs because it's hosted by UC Davis. We think that's very important to have depends which department you're in or what subject area, but clearly UC Davis ranks in the top 20, 30 universities in the country. So to have the academic home there, we think is very important. UC Davis provides us with the office space, the office equipment associated with that. In addition, for the special issues which come out, usually that's not run by the journal's staff themselves. The requesting party will provide resources to have that put in place. And in the document, there's one example there of the DRERIP series of papers that are coming out. These we regard as very important. These are the conceptual models which will be deriving a lot of the science associated with the Delta in the coming years, and we wanted those documented. So ERP has been helping us with that. By far the biggest chunk of funding that comes to this to help support the journal is through the University of California system, or the California Digital Library. And what this does is to provide the journal electronic platform, which is a pretty sizable chunk of change if you look at what it would cost if you went to Elsevier or other commercial publishers. And so what this electronic platform does for us, it provides the review system and the efficiency. It provides web access to the journal 24/7, which usually there's large costs associated with that. It provides the archiving function of the papers and journals. And perhaps most importantly, it provides the continuous IT support, the maintenance of that web page and the system, so that we don't need to mess with it. The system is just there. It gets used by the associate editors and folks submitting papers. So perhaps I'll stop there and be willing to take any questions about the
Ms. Marcus. Yeah. A couple things. I was impressed with the growth, even with the limited information you were getting. The growth has been ongoing since it started in 2003. And my experience with other web-based productions is some of them will go up really fast, but they tend to drop off pretty fast. And this is a little more than 8 years of history, which is pretty impressive in the web world. The other thing that struck me as I was reading this and reflecting on our discussion on the Delta Plan is the likely importance, increasing importance of the online journal to execution of a Delta Plan. The speed with which you can receive, evaluate, and publish a peer-reviewed article here is remarkably faster than almost anywhere else. And there's no apparent complaint that you've compromised quality in this, which is very important, which means is you talk about how to apply science that's changing all the time and moving fast. Somehow this fits into a Delta Science Plan concept that I don't have well thought out, but appeals to me, the notion that there is a place to go where subjects can be advertised for submission and received and responded in a relatively short period of time. So in part of this, which I support, the extension of the contract, part of this also is there a way to keep all the good qualities that are there and provide information to the council that we then can use, and the other people who decide on scientific issues can use the journal material rapidly and productively, and how would that be done? How better could it be done? I mean, I think there's a lot of potential here for more than just maintaining a journal by itself. It's the integration of that information with the various agencies that are around.
Actually, that's a very good point, and we haven't thought about that beyond, for example, in the biological opinions, many of the journal gets cited very heavily in those kinds of documents. So do you have any suggestions beyond, already the journal gets sent out to a fairly extensive list so people know what is actually in the journal on a given month?
I haven't thought it through, but it just strikes me that you've been able to maintain a sense of balance and judgment and quality of work over 8+ years. And this is one of the symbols of an integrated scientific opinion publication review process that we have that helps explain what a Delta Science Plan might ultimately suggest for management. Maybe there are other things you can talk about. I mean, what would you do, for example, if we had another pelagic organism decline or you pick at some kind of a catastrophic failure in the Delta? Are there things that would merit fast turnaround, high quality scientific work related to operational questions? I don't know what the answer is. Maybe. I haven't thought it through any more than that, but it just seems to me that if done carefully, and I do not want the journal to become a politically directed tool of anybody, including the council, but if it could be done in a way to try to anticipate whatever we come up with in terms of adaptive management. Everybody says they're doing it now, but what they really mean is their intentions are good and they'll take a lot of things into account. We're moving, in the Delta Science Plan, we'll move beyond that, I hope, and this plays a role. I'm not sure quite yet how, but potential impact is great. Yeah, okay. All right, any questions? All right, Don, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just a question on your budget. What efficiencies help them to reduce in the area of their supplies, equipment, editing, and graphic design to basically drop it up by almost, well, at least 25% for the next 2 years to offset, I guess, keep it in the same frame as relative to the costs, because obviously there were some increases in compensation and benefits, but what is it they're going to be doing now that's going to cut those costs significantly over the next 2 years when there may be some product costs that go down and so forth? I guess I'm just kind of curious about that, Dr. Goodwin.
Why it had dropped like that, and I would also, Lauren, if you have anything to add, it was my understanding that is the that they have 2 part-time people to help with the graphic. One does the graphics, one does the copy editing.
That's how they're able to drop the costs. I mean, again, I'm not.
Right.
Again, I don't.
Ms. Hastings, may know.
If this is on. Yes, I believe they've just determined that they found those services more cheaply. So they were able to reduce the costs in terms of getting that extra help that they needed.
Okay, so that reflects more on the side of the labor to put the letter together than does supplies or equipment or.
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, all right. Well, that helps because, again, I mean, obviously there's an increase in those that are the higher end of the spectrum, and so maybe folks that come in at a lower salary to do those types of stuff.
Yeah, I think they just learned that they could get those services cheaper, and they chose to go with
it. But again,
that.
it's not a bad thing. I was curious, though, because that's pretty dramatic.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah, because they went with freelance people from having someone in the office. So.
Oh, okay. Very good. Thanks.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Anyone in the audience like to speak on this issue? Okay, is there a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Natoli, is there a second? Ms. Norcus, there is a second to adopt the staff recommendation, starting with Mr. Nordhoff.
Gray, aye.
Marcus, aye.
Fiorini, aye.
Eisenberg, aye.
Totally aye.
Okay, you got 6-0, and if Mr. Johnston, he had to go step out, I believe, for a moment. If you would permit him to add on before we adjourn by the end of the day, that would be appreciated. Okay, let's